Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar, your host. And today I'm going to talk about what I consider are the seven most impactful developments in 2023. And I'm not talking in the context of any specific country, not about India or the US, but globally. So I'm going to try and I'm going to identify seven. Whether you agree with me or not, we will know from your comments. But I'm going to identify seven developments that have taken place mostly in 2023 that are the most eventful ones of this year. And I think they are going to have a long-term impact, several of them. But clearly, they show major shifts in various aspects of our political life. But before I identify what these seven eventful developments are, impactful developments are, please subscribe to Khanversations, like the video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your friends and your social network. So the first and the foremost thing I think is the apparent, shall we say, palpable nature of the consequences of climate change. So we can see that we have had the hottest year in a long, long time. It is perhaps the hottest year ever. It seems that the average global temperatures have gone up by more than 1.5% or close to 1.5% Celsius from the last half a century, which is huge if you listen to climate scientists. This time we have had earthquakes, wildfires, floods, hurricanes, all kinds of disasters. According to one estimate, there were 18 such billion-dollar plus disasters in the United States alone in the first 10 months of 2023. So these are not just that we are feeling hot. They have an impact on crops. They have an impact on economies. Some of the devastation caused by the natural disasters like earthquakes and floods can have a huge impact on local economies, forcing people to be displaced internally within their country or even trigger international migration. So climate change there's no debate anymore about whether there is global warming and climate change or not. The question really is, are we doing enough now? That's where the debate has to go. The year ends with COP28 in Dubai. And apparently the biggest thing that came out of that conference was this final acknowledgement that we need to move away from fossil fuels, but there are lots of questions about sustainable energy and whether they are truly sustainable. Even now, people are raising questions about the benefits of planting trees, which apparently was overestimated. And even carbon capture is now being questioned about its efficacy and its cost. So whatever suggestions we have come up to combat global warming are being questioned by those who advocated those. So I think the most important thing that has happened this year is that it has forced us all to recognize climate parameters. The second major event or development is about the Russia-Ukraine war. I mean, this war has been going on for now nearly it'll be two years in February in 2 months from now. But the important aspect of this war, which is critical, is the failure of the counteroffensive that was launched by Ukraine in the summer. It was supposed to reverse Russian gains that it has not achieved. And there was a lot of talk in the West about all the fancy weapons that Britain and Germany and the United States have given Ukraine. And so the inability of Ukraine to show significant gains in its counteroffensive and the subsequent scandal about corruption in the Ukrainian military and now tensions within the Ukrainian government itself suggest that the defense of Ukraine is not going as well as Western nations had hoped for. But from a Western point of view, the fact that Russia has not fully occupied Ukraine or has not really moved much in the past few months, is the positive. But because of other developments, such as the war in the Middle East, what the Russia-Ukraine war has done is essentially created cleavages within the West itself. There are issues of nations within the European Union which are divided. Hungary is now blocking aid to Ukraine. There are other countries which are probably not as excited about this war in Europe as one would like to think. And of course, the Republicans are now using the Ukraine war as an instrument for bargaining with the Democrats. So even though there is much talk about bipartisan support for the Ukrainian war in the US, it really is not. And globally, I think Russia has regained, it has become stronger economically. The entire regime sanctions that the US had imposed on Russia has not really had the kind of impact the US was hoping for. And India, China continue to stand with Russia, and now we see that even countries like United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia in the Middle East and other countries in Africa are also willing to make new deals with Russia, indicating that Russia is not the pariah that the West had hoped to make it. So I think the second development is what is happening and not happening in the Russia-Ukraine war, and I think that this is going to have a long-term impact on the global balance of power and the future of the liberal order that America is fighting for. The third thing that I want to identify as something that has developed this year and is significant is the restructuring of the global economy. People were talking about how globalization was being replaced by globalization. That means that people were more, or shall we say, less enthusiastic about globalization now, especially in the post-pandemic era. But I think what it has resulted in is new strategies of globalization, China plus one, friendshoring, and looking for alternatives to manufacturing, especially with the emergence of India and Vietnam and Philippines and Malaysia as alternative places where countries can invest other than China, is basically indicating that while globalization is not going away, there is a geopolitical impact on globalization. And so geopolitical tensions are restructuring the global economy and the processes of globalization. That I think is important. And that really emanates from what you could call is the emergence of a kind of Cold War between the United States and China. This began with Donald Trump when he started basically trying to impose tariffs and undermine free trade from China, blame China for COVID, and unleashed a lot of anti-China rhetoric. And that has continued under the Biden administration to such an extent that a lot of people who study geopolitics feel that we might be in a new Cold War between the US and China. The US insists that we are not. President Biden has repeatedly asserted, and in his meeting in November in San Francisco with Xi Jinping, he said that, look, we are going to compete aggressively with China. We will help our allies. We will not let China geopolitically threaten Taiwan and Philippines. And we will also support Ukraine in its war against Russia. But we will do all of this, but that doesn't mean that we are in a Cold War with China. We'll continue to cooperate. So this idea that we will compete for strategic advantage in technologies and in trade, we'll cooperate for global issues such as the pandemic and the environment, and we will also seek to ensure that there is no conflict triggered by China. And so while the entire year looked as if US and China were heading towards a Cold War-like conflict, especially after the Balloon Gate, the meeting and the high level of diplomacy that went on before that meeting in November kind of suggests that it is quite possible that these two countries are going to manage their relations better. The fifth development that I want to talk about, which I think is having a major impact on world politics, on the global economy, is the awareness of the potential and the power of artificial intelligence. We've been talking about AI for now 2 decades. I remember when I was in engineering college in the late 1980s, we were talking about artificial intelligence, and I had read a couple of articles about it. I don't remember where, and it was quite frustrating at that time that we didn't even have a course in our engineering college which dealt with artificial intelligence in some way. It was just something magical that we could talk about and look forward to in the future. But now, with Chat GPT and the creative products that we can actually see, not only see, but ordinary people can also generate AI products. This week, I'm grading final papers, and I can clearly see which of my students are using Chat GPT to write their papers and to embellish their writing skills. Even Grammarly is now using AI. So suddenly, the potential of the power of AI has become a globally recognized phenomena, and more countries and more companies are asking this question as to how they can employ AI and use it in their businesses, in their geopolitics. I think there will be tremendous application of AI in battlefield. It'll be more of your robots versus my robots, and whoever has a more powerful AI is going to win the war. And we already saw the devastating impact of drones, both in the defense of Kiev in the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war, and also in the shift of balance of power between Azerbaijan and Armenia. So I think that this sudden awareness of the power of AI, which is now everybody senses it, I think is actually going to give more impetus. There will be more money for research, more people interested in studying, and of course, more and more individuals and corporations and countries interested in applying AI. We have already seen how in the Israeli-Hamas war, how AI is being used by Israel for its propaganda purposes on the social media. So I think that this development, this widespread recognition of the power of AI, I think it is analogous. It is analogous to the sudden awareness a few years ago about the power of social media. And so everybody was now on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and trying to use it in their business, using that in their political campaigns. And I think the same phenomena is now being repeated with AI. The sixth major impact that I think is about India. India has surpassed China as the world's most populous country. In fact, in 2023, India has done two or three things. It has not only become the most populous country than China, but it has also become the fifth biggest economy. It has surpassed its previous colonizer, Great Britain, and now has a bigger, more robust, shall we say, even more vibrant economy than UK, certainly. India's economy is, as I've said before, one of the fastest growing economies among major economies in the world. So India surpassing China is significant because India is a growing market, and India is a young country, unlike China. More than half the population is below 30. What that tells you is that there is a large potential for work. So there are lots of workers, and if India can train them and educate them as it is already doing so, then India will become the biggest source of competent, qualified people who will not only help India, but help run the world. Already you can see Indians as CEOs of many corporations and also running countries. Rishi Sunak in UK, Nikki Haley trying to become the president of the United States. Kamala Harris is also in running. So India is beginning to enjoy its population dividend, and that is an important development. It is one of the cornerstones of India's emergence as a global power this year. And increasingly, people are recognizing India as one of the more important countries in the world, partly because of its expertise in technology, partly because of its large diaspora, and also because of its large population, which gives it a huge market. What large markets do is allow countries to grow even without being dependent on exports. So that is an important development, I think, which is going to have a global impact, and it's also going to trigger realignment. So the whole idea of Indo-Pacific and the Quad and countries in the South, global South, Africa, and other parts, looking up to India for its leadership are all consequences of India emerging as a major power, the biggest country in the world, the fifth biggest economy in the world. And of course, I think the most impactful moment was October 7th, when Hamas terrorist attacks killed about 1,200 Israelis. Nearly 800 of them are civilians. And there was horrific images coming out of Israel about rape and targeting of women and children, and then subsequent genocidal vengeance from Israel, which has been going on for the last 2 months. What these events have done is had a huge impact on U.S. foreign policy and U.S. grand strategy. The U.S. was withdrawing from the Middle East, focusing more and more on Indo-Pacific and trying to contain China. But Russia's invasion of Ukraine has pulled the U.S. back into Europe, now spending hundreds of billions of dollars on Europe's security. And then Hamas, with its attack, has pulled the U.S. back into the Middle East, which it appeared that it had abandoned already. Since the time when Obama came up with the phrase leading from behind, since that time, it was clear to many people that the US had developed a fatigue in the Middle East and was beginning to withdraw. But Hamas's attack and Israel's response has once again put the Arab-Israeli conflict, the Palestinian crisis, on the center of the global geopolitics, and the US is once again dragged back into the Middle East, and it is also once again reshaping alliances. It's raising the question whether the Abrahamic Accords was a successful policy or not. It's also raising the issue as to the promises that the world is making about creating a Palestinian state. Will those promises be fulfilled once the fighting gets over, and the atrocities and the casualties of children and women? 19,000 Palestinians have died, over 7,000 children, over 5,000 women. Once these images and pictures disappear from the media, will the world continue to push for a two-state solution? One wonders. But what this war, whatever you want to call it, has done has created further cleavages between inside the West. While America is spending billions to defend Israel and sending weapons and is involved in integrated strategic planning in different phases of the war, the Europeans have essentially provided some kind of a moral support, but not all Europeans. France, for example, has been insisting and calling for an immediate ceasefire, a humanitarian ceasefire at the UN Security Council. In a way, it's a very clever strategy. Macron knows the US will not allow that to happen. And so Macron continues to raise that issue, knowing that it's a futile attempt, but nevertheless, he gets credit for taking an entirely different position from the US. So this battle, like the Russia-Ukraine war, is creating schisms within the West, but also creating realignments on the global scale. One of the major consequences over the last period was India reversing its vote on the ceasefire issue. The first time it was taken in October, India voted against the ceasefire resolution in the General Assembly of the United Nations because it did not condemn Hamas. But the second time in December, India voted for it, even though it was exactly like the previous resolution. So these, I think, are the 7 developments that are reshaping global geopolitics and global economy. So I think that the 2023 year has been quite eventful, um, not just because of two wars, but also about the growing awareness of AI, growing awareness of the dangers of climate change, the danger of a potential US-China Cold War. So all of this together makes 2023 a very consequential year. And while we don't see the consequences, the immediate consequences of all these developments, I think we will see several of those unfold in 2024 and 2025. And when we will be talking about when I do this similar video next year and the year after, I potentially will be referring back to the developments in 2023. So I hope this provokes thought, gives you something to talk about in your network with your friends, and reflect upon this year as we look forward to 2024, which I hope brings peace and prosperity to all. And so please, if you have not subscribed to Khanversations, please subscribe to Khanversations, like the video, press the bell icon, and share this with your friends and your social network. I will continue to talk about 2024 and the successes of US and failures of US foreign policy, some aspects of the economy, and so on and so forth. So please look forward to more videos that reflect on the year 2023. So until next time, take care.